You make my heart rejoice when I hear your still small voice whisper teaching and promises, everlasting covenants to seal upon my heart.
So how was everybody's day today? Mine was crazy. I didn't think I'd make it tonight. Alyssa's gone, Saphraine's gone, Xaundelle hasn't made it. I have so I had an early morning appointment, and then I was on my way to the barn, and something made me check my email. And I'm so glad I checked my email, because I had we have a big event coming up, and it's about 100 tickets a day that we receive from this one organization. And I had an email that they were cutting us by 140 tickets. So I had to text my boss, who then said he was having dental surgeries, and I had to text our manager so she could help me. And then she was looking into stuff. So I went to the barn, hung out with the horse, and then she called me and said, hey, I need to find the contract so I can tell you how many tickets we're supposed to get, so you can call them and blah, blah, blah. So I felt like I had to run into work, but I smelled like the barn and I looked like the barn. So I went to Ross. And I got this cute little shirt and this cute little sweater. But the reason I'm telling you the story is because they are selling pumpkin spice coffee at Ross from Starbucks, and it's in a container, so I had to buy it. So as soon as I got home, I was actually able to get here in time. I had to pour myself some pumpkin spice coffee. That's the whole point of my story. Riveting, I know. So I think, let me just text Alan and make sure he put us live on Facebook also, because I think that's what we were going to do. Let me see.
I don't see us on Facebook.
Okay, because I know that last time we had people that I don't know that have Zoom. So I like this because I feel like we're all here together and we can kind of interact, and that's a little bit easier for me than the way we did it last time. But if more people have issues joining us, then we'll probably have to go back to that. Hi, Ellie. Let me see.
So, anybody else have a riveting coffee story to share?
Trader Joe's $4.99.
Huh?
Said Trader Joe's $4.99.
I've been lucky to get a bunch of free coffee lately, so I haven't spent money on coffee in a while. I'm starting a coffee company, so if you have coffee you'd like me to share or try, send it my way. This is how I get free coffee.
Are you gonna plug your page or something? Or
I talked about it last time. Mom, you're muted if you're trying to talk to us.
I was like, Xaundelle is ignoring me. What'd you get at Trader Joe's?
oh, I was just saying I got my coffee from Trader Joe's for $4.99 a pound, which is like $2 less than what I've been buying.
The coffee I'm drinking is from the Shavuot conference in June.
Just like,
Speaking of,
It's free.
does everybody have it on their calendars? Shavuot conference in June? I don't think I have it. We're at the end of our calendar, so I don't have it on that calendar.
13th through the 17th is what I have.
Yep, that's right.
It's a long time.
What's that?
We got to fill in that schedule.
I'm a planner. Absolutely do. How's everybody doing? How was everybody's month? It's been a whole month since we've talked to anybody. You guys can all actually go on off mute so that we can just jump in and talk. Except for, yeah.
I've had a couple of interesting things happen. A neighbor across the street, spiritually, a neighbor across the street who, I think one evening, Halloween Eve, presented demonic activity as he was speaking to me. And that's never happened to me before. That was new. And then was it last night? Last night, I believe he came over and he asked for prayer because my husband actually months and months ago prayed with him because he said he sees things. And he's saying that he lives directly across the street and we have a big front window. And he said he sees people in our house. I mean, the stuff that he said to me on Halloween Eve was really unnerving. It was naughty and just creeped me out, really creeped me out. I left saying, I just rebuke that in the name of Jesus. You don't follow me home, you know. So last night, he revealed that he's even seeing more things. And he's on pain meds, I think, because he's had a back injury, foot surgery, but it sounds like there's a little bit more to this gentleman. We don't know him really well. He came to live and take care of his elder mom. She's like 98. And so he's just had some issues, but the things that he was saying to us, that he sees in the neighborhood and he sees my house because he faces my house, it's really odd. And so we prayed. And we prayed against any spirits, any evil spirits, any, demonic spirits that are plaguing him. I don't believe he knows the Lord, so we want to talk to him about receiving Jesus, but I don't know more of his background. So we'd never had anybody come and tell us that. So that was really interesting. And I had some odd dreams in between Halloween and now too. So it's been kind of an active month spiritually for me, I think.
So have you ever heard of the term Ving, Vaving?
No.
So it basically, where I first heard it was Gloria Zion. And basically it's what Alan did with a bunch of the men from here is they got like these golden railroad spikes almost, and they went and they claimed our territory. So they put it on all of the corners of each one of our lots, and then they also did it on our town, and then I think they did it in our county. Alyssa and Saphraine might remember.
Yeah.
So that we're basically claiming this territory for the Lord. And so when you were talking, I was just thinking of that. One thing that Alan has always done is our boundaries of our property are the Lord's, and nothing unclean can come onto it. And so we've actually even had people, like you were saying, demonic people come walking towards the house, and you can almost see the demonic having to stop at the street as they come up to the yard, up to the door. So I would just encourage you just to claim your territory. So yes, your house, obviously, but definitely your territory. We did that with Saphrane's house. When she first moved in, there was a couple little encounters at her house. And so we claimed her territory, and she had a couple little things with freezer stuff, but nothing dangerous after that. So I would really encourage you to do that.
Yeah, the first time my husband ever prayed for him and some of the things he shared with him, he then walked our property. We hadn't heard about the bombing. He just walked our property and prayed over, claimed it. And I told him, yeah, we need to do that today. But interestingly enough, this gentleman had to go to jail today. So he apparently broke a violation of his parole, and we think it was a DUI. It's really hard to understand him because he kind of is all over the place when he's talking to us. So we're not quite sure what his offense was, but I just, after Halloween Eve and the things that he said, I've been really uncomfortable with that. So, yeah.
I was gonna bring up two different things, but I want to say it was Chris Valentin, I could be wrong, that came to Shady Grove and was talking about blessing the Gophers. Mom?
No, that was Carrie Kirkwood.
Oh, Carrie Kirkwood. They're all the same.
No.
But he was talking about how he has at his house was having gophers in his yard, and they were just creating holes all throughout his property. And people would normally call pest control or, try to get rid of them. But instead he started praying blessings over the gophers. And over time, he prayed blessings over them to be fulfilled in their destiny, to be where they belong, bless them into, God's purpose for their lives. And because he blessed them, they moved on and they moved out of his property, and he no longer had gophers. And I think we use that story actually a lot in our community, but bless the gophers is like if there's somebody at your work that's bothering you, or somebody in your neighborhood, or somebody in your vicinity that's causing problems, rather than cursing them or trying to get rid of them or necessarily even praying against them, sometimes just praying blessing over them moves them on into a destiny that they have, or another area that they have, or a place that they have set aside for them.
Like the teacher at the kids' school?
Yep, we did this. There was a teacher, before my kids started at this specific school, we looked online at their teachers, and there was a character that was a teacher that we immediately saw a picture and felt like, well, we don't want our kids to be going to that school if this person's there. So
They
we
went by a different pronoun than what they looked like.
So we just started praying blessings over him, that he'd be moved into, God's destiny for his life and the plan for his life. And before my kids started school, he was no longer employed there. So
Wow.
it works. It works. But also I was going to say this new year, so just a couple days ago, I am going by the calendar we all hang on our wall, the Gregorian or Julian calendar.
Well, it's also in here in the calendar.
December 31st to January 1st. I didn't have my kids, they were with their dad, so it was just me and my husband and our baby. And we spent the evening talking about things that happened in 2023 that we want to change and make better for the new year, what our goals are as a married couple, what our goals are as a family, things that we want to implement or change, or etc. And by doing that, we also walked through our home, and like room by room, we just read scriptures over each room, prayed over each room, anointed the doorways. And that's similar to vobbing. If you don't want to, or if you don't feel equipped or prepared to do your neighborhood or your county or whatever, just starting in your home is a big step. It's taking authority over your home. And after we did it, we both were kind of like, this is something we should probably do regularly, if not every new year, then maybe maybe like even more than that, like every couple months or every 6 months, to restake our claim and just like pour that blessing into our home, blessing each room, from the living room where the kids spend most of their time, kitchen to where I spend most of my time, our bedrooms, and just praying specific prayers for those rooms and the people that are using them. We don't use our front door, so we prayed over our back door that everybody goes in and out of. Like, for some reason, we both felt like that was really specific to like pray for our coming and going, and just like remembering who is and who isn't allowed here, and what spirit is and isn't allowed to preside here. And you can do that daily. You can do that with or without your husband. You can do that constantly,
I'm sorry, I was talking to Alan. He can't get us on Facebook Live, so it's just us. And I told Alan it's fine. Whoever's here is who's supposed to be here. So sorry, I didn't mean to.
Did you send that link to that one person?
No.
Okay, I'll send it to her.
Okay.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Xaundelle, do you have any testimonies of that?
Um, the only one that comes to mind of recent is it is also a Glory Zion reference, I guess, but when we were in Brazil, we were doing a prayer walk with our ministry, Lovely, that goes to the to the sexually exploited in the sex industry. And so we were with Iris Ministries that does red light district in Fortaleza, and there was a specific area that they said that they have not been able to get have permission to be there. Basically, like they haven't been able to break the walls down there. And so my team was praying, and Gloria Zion is known for their, I guess, like metaphors and things that they do, symbolisms, I guess.
Yeah, they are.
And so what, like I had this thing in my, none of the Gloria Zion ladies from our team were there, but I just imagined them like putting a stake in the ground, and I was like, if they were here, they'd be like putting a stake in the ground. And it's like
They'd be bobbing.
Yes, I didn't know the term. My mom told it to me after I did it. But I just like kept picturing these two ladies that are awesome intercessors doing it. And then my friend, like Lindsay, my ministry partner, started praying and proclaiming and taking the ground. And I turned to her and I was like, don't you want to like put a stake in the ground? And she was like, I literally thought you were going to do that, but then I didn't say it. But I saw this metal thing over here, and I think you should put it in the ground. I was like, this is so not me. Like, it's so weird, you know? So it's this weird, like, metal rod, and we're, like, in a sketchy part of town. Like, I'm like, probably shouldn't be handling this sharp object, but I am, because it's like, God protect me. And I go to stick it in the ground, and the team's like, wait! Don't put your hand on that. Let's find you a rock or something. So the Irish team was also worried about me getting cut. And so none of us had the thought of what happens when you strike metal with a rock. So I'm like, I go to like, nail the stake into the ground with a rock, and a spark happened. And it was really comical, and we were all laughing and like, that was crazy. Like the power of God, fire. But yeah, especially with the ministry that I do with Lovely and sex trafficking, we talk a lot about taking ground and taking back like ground that God had the original intent for. Like obviously the Lord didn't make any part of this earth to be a red light district. And so we do a lot of prayer walking. We do a lot of we've done a lot of recon, like before we go out. Like we'll just go drive around, we'll pray, we'll walk the streets, we'll see what we're feeling. And then after doing that for several years, we've seen crazy breakthrough in the red light district here in Dallas after like 3 or 4 years of trying to go to the streets, doing a lot of driving, doing a lot of praying. One of the house mom ladies got saved she runs a prostitute ring out of a hotel, and she gave her life to the Lord. And now, even though she still works there and it doesn't make sense to all of our minds, now we have a full access to this hotel. And it's so funny because like when my husband and I drive around down there, it can feel real weird. It's not far from our house, like 10 minutes away. But like I pull up to this hotel and it's like become like a sanctuary for us. And it's like we've just put that stake in the ground there over and over and over and had so much fruit that now we have this like super safe little area in the midst of like one of the scariest places in the Metroplex. So I think that's a cool example because it goes beyond like your own territory, I guess I would say. Like it goes beyond your own home and land. Like you can take territory anywhere God commands you to. It's really cool.
I can vouch for that location too. That place Sketchy. No, but it's awesome what has happened there. So.
Yeah.
That is important, and it reminds me of redeeming land also. Like, there's a person that Xaundelle actually told me about and that I listened to. He's really difficult to listen to. He's got a really weird voice, and I have a hard time listening to him, but some of his teaching is so different and so esoteric, and yet if you really dive into it, it's so biblical and anointed. And one of the things that I had always thought of, because I don't know if you guys know, but I was brought up on the mission field. So I didn't live in the United States. I didn't have any understanding of what being an American was, even though I was an American living abroad, because I was brought up in third world countries. We had just always, my family had always, when we went to wherever we were assigned to be, we established ourselves there. And there was something that I think his name's Arthur Burke. Something that he talked about was redeeming land. And he talked about like how so many awful things have happened on land, and the Bible talks about how the earth is groaning for the sons of God to be revealed. And he mentions how that's so that the sons of God can then turn around and redeem the land. And it really struck a chord with me. So wherever Alan and I have landed, we've always tried to go out there and just ask the Lord and ask the Holy Spirit just to fill that land and redeem the land and heal the land, and so that kind of goes along with you putting the stake in the ground in this terrible place of Brazil, because God created, like you say, he created this earth. He doesn't want any place to be a red light district, and he wants to be able to redeem it. So anyway, there's a lot of heavy stuff happening right now in the world, and I just think about how, hold on one second. Yes. Okay. I don't do this when you're on your stuff. I don't come running down.
Lock that door.
I'm going to start messing with him. Every time he does his 10 a.m., I'm going to come down here and start causing problems. Anyway, I just have been really feeling like there's so much heaviness going on in the world and so much stuff happening that it's hard to really maintain peace and joy and all of that. And some of the stuff that we had come from our last session was people just wanting to hear more about intercession. And Saphraine, there was something else too that we were going to talk about. It was intercession and something else.
Like generational stuff.
I think we decided not to do generational stuff today, but
Okay.
I will just read the question.
Okay.
More about intercession, about gifts and how we can train ourselves as mothers to see the gifts in our children and help them to get in tune with them, and discipline. How we discipline and biblical discipline. I know probably from Xaundelle, myself, Elysa, and you, Mom, we probably all have a mix of different discipline for our children, but I don't know if that's something we want to dive into today.
I don't know. Do you guys want to dive into that today, or do you guys want to talk about something different? You guys can all unmute and chime in if you want. What, Sean?
The first topic was intercession, though? Is that what it says?
So last week we kind of touched a little bit on interceding for our families, and that I feel like the majority of wives and mothers have just that desire for intercession. We intercede for our husbands first, and then for our children, and then for our friends and our churches and stuff. But I feel like the majority of women, they might not have the watchman on the wall intercession, but I think that they have that desire to, I want to see my husband thrive in the ways of the Lord, so I'm going to pray for him. And then if we have children, I want to see my children thrive in the ways of the Lord, so we pray for our children. And our friends in our church, because we're commanded to pray for our leaders. So we kind of touched on that a little bit last month, and we had somebody ask if we could go a little bit deeper in that. So if we want to, we can. I know right now, that spirit of intercession is really stirred up in me, but I feel like kind of I have that intercession already. Kind of a watchman, a Quaker. Quaker was spoken over me way back. So that's been stirred up in me just because of all the stuff that's happening in the world. But I don't know if we want to go into that or not.
I'm open on all of it, wherever the spirit leads. Yeah. I do have a question though about intercession. I really felt or feel more drawn to as soon as something is mentioned to pray for it right then, not saying, okay, yeah, I'll pray for you, and then you walk away. And that's more and more in my daily life. But as far as intercession, I don't know how you gals do it, but I don't seem to be very good at like going into my prayer closet or doing any of that. I just have never done that. So do you gals make a point of setting aside a time and doing it, or is it through your day? How do you guys go about it?
So for me, I think that movie War Room was actually did a disservice to people that intercede, because you don't have to have a closet. I don't have a closet. I have a car.
Yeah.
And I know that all the drivers around me think I'm crazy. Because literally I yell, I scream, I rant, I rave, I throw my hands around. I do all of that in my car. And I pray in tongues at the top of my voice as loud as I can on the freeway. When I get into town, I might tone it down a little just so nobody calls the police. But I don't think that you need to wait for a prayer closet. The reason I do it in my car really is because that's pretty much the only time I'm alone, is in my car. I do feel a lot of times, and it's not always, but for me anyway, intercession is an alone time. It's when I'm just allowing the Holy Spirit to kind of flow out. I might, something might spark what I'm praying for, but then I just pray in tongues basically, and the Holy Spirit just speaks through me. If it's particularly for, let's say, my kids, or for somebody that needs help, or let's say healing or whatever, then I do try to focus praying for that. Sometimes I use scripture as a bouncing off time, or bouncing off springboard into what I pray for. Sometimes I'll pray like when I'm washing the dishes, always alone. There have been times when I've been part of a prayer team, but that's more, I've never been a leader of a prayer team, so it's always been more of like just kind of praying along with the group as to what the leader is saying we're going to pray for. So that to me is a little bit different than actually being in intercession for a specific thing. I know I brought up last time about just 2, 3, 4 in the morning, getting up and just praying for one of our kids, just interceding for that child, for their life to be saved, basically, for hours or just for 10 minutes, and then going back to sleep, knowing that we were woken up for a reason, praying. Sometimes just me, sometimes me and Alan. Alan would walk through the house and pray through the house. I didn't, because I like my sleep, but so that's me. I don't know if anybody else has something they want to share.
No, I think that's good. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm a, stay-at-home mom all the time now, and I always have kids around me, but it's kind of just become like as you go throughout the day, like pray without ceasing, like constantly trying to remind myself and stay in that focus, because I don't have a lot of time to just be like, all right, kids, you do what you want to do, and I'm going to go over here for a couple of hours and see you later. If I do get that time, it's usually really late at night. But no, it's definitely just throughout the day as I can. Hopefully as they start getting older, I'll get a little bit more dedicated time, but with young kids around, it's when I can make it happen. But
Yeah, I think I'm probably more like my mom, like I'm doing it in the car, like, or even like while I'm cooking dinner.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I have like a different perspective on intercession. I don't know that it needs to be, I don't know that it's for everyone to be like in a war room, or that it looks the same for everybody. I remember when I was younger and somebody was trying to explain to me like, well, intercessors are just the people that have the gift of like praying for other people and like feeling what they feel and like standing in the gap for them. And I've never felt like that described me. I think maybe because I'm lean a little bit more towards my dad's personality in that realm, where I'm a little bit more like, just get over it. I understand that you feel this way, or I hear that you feel this way. Let's move through it. Like, let's get through it and on to the other side. And so like the whole like standing in the gap and like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like being in that, I'm interceding with you. Like, I think I'm kind of like, oh, okay, let's be done with it. Anyways, so when I feel like somebody, or when somebody is like, hey, I need prayer for this, I am probably much more like, okay, let's get it done. Let's pray for it. Let's move on. And it's hard for me to like make a list of things to pray for and go to a closet or go through this list during dinner time or go through this list while I'm in the car. I'm much more of a, let's pray for it. Let's be done with it. Let's move on. If it's a life thing like my kids, or, I'm in a financial situation that I need breakthrough in, or I'm in a health situation that we need breakthrough in, then I think I'm interceding or praying through that while I'm making dinner or in the car. And it's probably more paired with worship and just diving into the throne room and asking more for the presence of God to intervene in that situation than like a lengthy, wordy prayer. Xaundelle. Xaundelle's making faces.
I was just curious, like, Saf, like, have you ever been in a situation though, like, where you're praying, like, not just for breakthrough? I guess I'm trying to think of, like, okay, like intercession for Israel. You pray for Israel. You can sit there and pray for Israel for more than 10 seconds. Like, you
Yeah.
have a heart, like you feel the gripping of it,
Yes, but I would say it's more of I'm putting maybe my war room is more of a worship perspective.
Mine is too, yeah.
Right? I'm gonna turn on worship music. I'll probably more so cry and weep over Israel than have like a wordy prayer for Israel. I'm more like, okay, God, I need your spirit to intervene. I think maybe I'm coming from, I remember some intercessors at our church before Shady Grove, and how at Grace Vineyard, the name slipped my mind, and maybe how it was like so
Systematic, kind of like,
yes, and wordy, and just it had to be done a certain way and look a certain way and feel a certain way, and that's kind of maybe where I'm like, oh, like that's not for me. And then I think of Shady Grove, and I remember like pre-service prayer and it being more of like worship and just warring on behalf. And it was like intense, and it was entering a throne room of petitioning the presence of God versus just how can I fill my prayer time?
yeah. I mean, I think there's biblical basis for that too, because it says, don't pray like the pagans who think that they have to, go on these long prayers and do it a certain way to get what they want from whatever deity. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
definitely biblical to not just ramble on.
And I remember Gary Benjamin at Shady Grove. I'm gonna turn off my camera, but you can still hear me. And he said he would go into like a prayer room and he would have a list of people he wanted to pray for. And he would, stand there and say, okay, I'm praying for this person and God do this and God do that. And this is amazing. And he'd go on to the next person. And he felt like, man, he's been in this room praying for hours. And he just had like the most intense prayer time and dedicated his whole day to prayer. And then he'd look at the clock and 15 minutes had gone by. He'd be like, oh, well, I'm done. I prayed for everybody. So now what? I think that sometimes we hear intercession and well, at least for me, and I think of like, oh, this long, lengthy, wordy session where like I have to get my time in, or maybe it wasn't good enough, or I have to get my time in, or I didn't pray long enough. I didn't pray hard enough. And I don't think that's necessarily what it is.
Well, mine's just completely different because I was brought up without any preconceived notions as to what intercession looked like. And it was more just let the Holy Spirit intercede through me, like be that mouthpiece for the Holy Spirit. So that's kind of that's why I can go for my full hour drive to the barn. I can go with that, just praying in the Spirit and letting the Holy Spirit intercede through me. Sometimes it doesn't last that long, but yeah, that's good. I think there is different, I think everybody does have different, what is the word? Oh, shoot, it just flew out of my head. The way that we do things, the way that we present things. Everybody has a different way. We're not all blonde and blue-eyed, we're all different. And so I think in that too, we all have a different fingerprint that God gave us to express ourselves and to allow the Lord to express through us, which is awesome. And I think that kind of ties right in with the second part of that question that we were sent about how do we recognize our kids' gifts and how do we encourage our children's gifts? And I would even say our spouses' gifts or our friends that we're in covenant with. I know for me, with my children, each one of them, the Lord gave me a word for them. And so I knew what the broad gifting was for them, but then it was layer upon layer upon layer, because a person is layered. What, Saphraine?
I just have a quick question.
Okay.
Are we saying spiritual gifts like speaking in tongues, healing, prophecy, etc.? Or are we just talking like general?
I was not talking about spiritual gifts. I was talking about the, like, for example, since I have both Saphraine and Xaundelle in here, I knew that Xaundelle's primary, is it a gift? I don't know if it's a gift. Her primary personality type is compassion. And Xaundelle has an overwhelming amount of compassion that God has given her that she then has to learn how to use for the Lord. Saphraine has an overwhelming amount of sense of justice. So, and then how does that sense of justice be used for the kingdom? So, and those two things are the two main things that the Lord gave me for my two daughters. My son, everybody knows, Mr. Battle Axe. That's Corin. But he's not in here right now. But for the two girls, that was what the Lord gave us, where Xaundelle is going to have this personality of compassion. So she needs to learn how to use that without getting run over, because people that have that compassion can tend to be doormats. So she had to be taught how to be bold and not let people just run over her. Saphraine, as the justice is the opposite. They don't get bowled over and they're not doormats. So she had to learn how to also show gentleness and compassion. So that is what I would say first and foremost, is to ask the Lord to give you your children's main, I want to say it's a gift, because I kind of feel like this is what God has put, their main underlying underpinnings of their lives or of their personalities, God has given them. That's a gift that God has given them. So then, okay, how do we teach them and how do we raise them with knowing that that's their foundation of their personality, and then how to raise them in the Lord. So that, I don't know if that's exactly answering that question, but that's what immediately came to me with that question. And then of course,
How young do you feel like you knew that about each of us, Mom?
I would say probably by 2. Yeah.
I think Ellie like definitely has like a gift of like empathy and like really feeling for people, and she's very mercy and like probably more like me, more mercy and compassionate. But when she was in the womb, someone prophesied that she'd be a healer. Do you remember that? And you remember I asked this like healing prophet person that came to our church to have a supernatural childbirth, and she said no, which I was like, oh great, which I didn't have. And she said no, but I'm gonna pray for her to have the gift of healing. And I've seen Ellie heal people with her little hands like 3 times already. Like when someone asks for prayer, she'll always put her little hand where it's supposed to go. And even her teacher told us like a couple years ago, she had hurt herself, and so the principal was like, instead of telling them what's hurting, just tell them to pray for you. And Ellie went right to her shoulder and like prayed for her. So I don't know, like if I would feel like I know exactly her giftings yet. I definitely think she'll be tender towards people, like very mercy. I was thinking mercy for me when you said compassionate, but mercy, very mercy, but then also very discerning. So for people on the call who are like, how do you identify things in your kids? It makes you think of like how Papa taught us discernment. And I'm sure some of you guys have heard the stories of like, you know, he would like purposely bring us into like a creepy store and wait for us to be like, what is that? Why do I want to run out of here because I can't breathe or I'm about to vomit? And he'd be like, do you feel that? And you'd be like, yes, get me out of here. And he'd be like, that's discernment. And you're like, why would you do it to a child? I'm just kidding.
I mean, yes, why?
It's so crazy. I've seen that happen with Ellie more than one time. Like I only have one kid, for those of you that don't know. I have one little girl, she's 5. And if we're at the mall or something and we walk by a weird store, Ellie will automatically look at us and be like, oh, that place is yucky. And you're like, you're right, Ellie, it is yucky. And so the other day when we were passing out the food at an apartment complex for our ministry, you know, with the women in the industry, this weird guy showed up and Joelle had mentioned him to me earlier, so I was kind of on the lookout for him. And as soon as this guy showed up, Ellie just right next to me, you know, like hiding behind me, like she felt it. And other kids were playing with him, like took the kid's ball and was playing. So I could tell she was confused, like, oh, should I not feel that way? I don't know. I just saw this like confusion in her face. And so I pulled her aside and I said, did that guy make you feel yucky? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, that's good. And that's right. And what you felt was okay. And you're allowed to feel that way. And so just like giving her like affirmation in her calling and helping her kind of navigate it, I feel like is super important for our kids, especially the gift of discernment, because the world's gonna, especially ministries, like they're like, love everybody, let your kids play with everyone. You know, like I've seen it with my own eyes where I'm like, oh no. And so just like kind of making sure that we're also like guiding them through those feelings and discernment. Like be kind, of course, and don't be mean people, but just like not discounting like her feelings, especially at a young age.
I mean, you say to be kind, but you can say, forgive me if I don't shake hands. You don't have to shake hands. You know, you don't have to hug everybody goodbye or hello and stuff. So
When we pulled up into this very, low income apartment, she looked around, she said, "Mom, people live here?"
Yeah.
Like, yes, sweetie, they do. And we're gonna be nice to them today and we're gonna serve them dinner, So it's just like trying to help her navigate like all of the feelings she was feeling.
Yeah, I think just like observing your children, you can see those gifts in them. Like when my grandfather was in the hospital and Julian, my oldest, was very little, like 6 to 8 months, I think, maybe a little bit older. And we were sitting in the waiting room and somebody walked in that was obviously, had some disturbing spirits with them, and my son looked over at him, looked at us, and we all were like, "Yep, we know, we got it." Like, we're aware. And you can see that, like, okay, he has discernment. And even to this day, we struggle. He's a teenager, but he's aware. Like he can say like, "Oh yeah, there's something up with that person. I don't really know." Like, at his school, there's some mixed company, and I'll say like, "Well, what about that person?" He's like, I don't know." Like that discernment is still there, and I think how we foster it is by, like Xaundelle said, like encouraging it. Like, yeah, you were right about feeling that way, and that's okay to feel that way. And it's okay to keep a distance, and it's okay to, keep him at arm's length, sort of thing. And so I think, and also with Julian, I would say, I also see that compassion that Xaundelle has. Like, since he was very little, he's wanted to feed the homeless, give the homeless money, give the homeless food, give the homeless socks, give the homeless whatever we have. Like, we would drive by a homeless person and he would say, "What do we have in the car that we can give him?" And he's still that way. And I would say my daughter probably is a lot more like me. Like, she's a justice person and she wants things to be fair. And she wants things to be right. And if it's not, you will hear about it.
God help us all.
I will hear about it. And Ari, oh, I just broke this toy. Ari, I'm not sure yet. I think Ari's a mixed bag, but I think just observing your children and seeing how they react in those different situations, and then just like fostering that, along with being brought into weird stores and places by my dad to practice our discernment. We played a card game, and people think we're so weird when we say this, by the way. Like, it's not witchcraft, I promise. But he would put out 3 cards and then he would say, like, face down, and he would say, "Okay, which one's the face card? Which one's the king or queen or jack or whatever?" And we would all sit there and try to discern. And sometimes we were right, sometimes we were wrong. And then we'd get ridiculed for being wrong. I'm just kidding, but no. So it's like, yes, it's weird to play those games, but it also helps you grow. Like, in the same way you would say, practice all of your giftings, practice healing, practice prophecy, practice words of knowledge. You might not always get it right, but the point is that we're being obedient to the Lord. And sometimes I think, even, I don't remember who I was talking to this about. Sometimes I think God asks us to do something, say something, especially if it's like a word of knowledge or prophecy, to see if we'll do it. Not even because it's going to be this like groundbreaking like moment in this person's life where you just change their life because you were prophetic, but to see if we'll obey. And it's like, that guy in the Bible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
I
know
know
him.
that guy. That one.
And he was tested. Oh man, it'll come to me later. After all of this, it'll come to me, and you guys won't even know what I'm talking about. But it was like, do this, and it was like ridiculous, and he did it anyways, and it was ridiculous, and he did it.
Jonah?
He didn't.
Or
No,
the leprous guy who had to dunk 7 times. That's what it made me.
Naaman.
maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
And
Like,
he
you
was
have to go
mad
wash
that
the Jordan 7 times.
and he was mad because the Jordan's muddy. And the servant girl told him to do it anyway.
No,
Definitely not that.
it doesn't matter. You
Oh,
guys know
right.
that you guys know this story from the
Getting text in the
Bible.
background. Is it the axe head thing?
It was the Syrian general
Excuse me,
army
I'm
guy
going to
with
read him.
leprosy.
I don't know that that's the story I'm thinking of. but
Alan,
we
that's
all know-
It
Naaman.
is. It is
but
because
we
he
all know there's a
Go
guy
away.
in the Bible that was
dipped in the
told to
Jordan
do
7
something,
times.
Go away.
and he was mad that he had to do it, and that he did it anyways, and that's all that mattered. The fact that what he did didn't matter. It wasn't that he healed somebody or rose anybody from the dead or did something marvelous.
Yeah.
The fact was that he was obedient. And I think that a lot of times, especially when early on we're practicing our gifts and early on we're learning about them, sometimes God will ask us to do things just to see if we're obedient,
Yeah.
just to see if we're listening. And I always feel like when I have a word or when I'm supposed to do something, I always get like super nervous and like I'll say, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then last minute, I'm like, just kidding, like, and I try to back out. And that's when
Just
I'm like,
kidding.
oh, I'm supposed to do this. This is God. And then I do it, and then whether or not it impacted anybody's life, it doesn't even matter because it impacted my life because I was obedient. And so I think when we are teaching our children to step out in those gifts, it is more so out of observance and saying, hey, I'm going to encourage you to do this, or practice this game with cards, or go into a weird store, or ask them, how did you feel about that situation? How did you feel about that person? What do you think about this? To get them to start recognizing that feeling so that when they feel it again and they step out in faith and do it, it's more so that they were obedient than whether or not they look like a fool or whether or not they were right or wrong. That's the point I'm trying to get to while my kid is being very loud.
I think Ari is a little warrior.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I was gonna say he's the one with no fear. He's the one that just jump into a situation like you were talking about your grandpa being sick. Well, I remember when your grandpa died, and Ari was like, wait a second, grandpa died, but it's his birthday. And so we got a birthday cake and we did all of this. And it was like he had no fear of that, like that there's a body lying in the living room, but we're going to celebrate his birthday anyway. It was so bizarre. But this was Ari just like working through it without that fear, and with because he knew where his grandpa really had gone, and we had all talked about it. So I just have always been really impressed with his with him being a little lion, basically, little warrior. Yeah. We don't know yet about little Mr. Boaz.
Tag your it, Alyssa.
Yeah.
I got it.
Your voice, Alyssa.
No, I mean, I think I mean, I definitely agree with everything you've said. My kids, I mean, Aton is just so much. But I feel like that, that tenacity and that like never stopping as much as it is like exhausting for me.
Mhm.
Like I really want to foster that in a spiritual sense. Like that kid, and I always joke that it's a joke, but I actually mean it seriously, that his name literally means steadfast because he never stops. And so I really want to foster that in him, like just that he would never stop running after the Lord and never stop chasing and always have that boundless energy and just be like so focused and so honed in and so gung-ho about what he's doing. But yeah, I agree. And even like, not to take it to like a purely physical level, but I think that even like, I was talking to Ian, I'm trying to get Ian to understand the like, seeing the ways that our kids behave in terms of like how they view and receive love or give love, like the 5 love languages thing. Like it drives Ian nuts that he's always like climbing on him. I'm like, well, he wants, physical touch is one of his love languages and quality time because all he wants to do is play. But yeah, I don't know. I think that just picking out the little things that like they might even annoy you, or they might like stand out to you as being like too much of something. Like that's kind of something that like pops up in my head. It's like, oh, you should pay attention to that. I don't know if that makes sense, but like.
Yeah, it's super important because I think that just like I was saying that each one of my kids, I had that one trait, and then you have to raise them up in that. It's so that they don't get blindsided, so that you can teach them how to not only walk in their gifting, like you guys have all said, but also how to maintain that without getting swayed to and fro. And sometimes it's harder with some than it is with others. But it's so important. That training is so important.
Right.
So, and then go ahead. Who did I
No, you're
interrupt?
good. I was just gonna agree with you that like focusing on what they are called to do, but also helping to balance it out, I think is really
Mhm.
important. Like to help them avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah.
I would
And
say
also,
like I think fostering their gifts goes along with fostering their relationship with the Lord. Like I guess I think of like what are you doing in your life as a mother or caregiver, or if we're even talking about like with our friends, with our sisters, with our whatever community you're in, like what are we doing to foster the relationship that people in our lives have with the Lord? Like as a parent, you can say like, okay, we're going to read 15 minutes of the Bible today and we're going to listen to worship music. And like when I was a kid, I remember having like worship time with my mom. All of us kids would like pick out a song and we'd sing and play instruments or whatever. Or, reading the word, having having memory verses, praying together. But like, what are we doing with our friends and with our kids and with each other to foster our relationships with the Lord? Like, how do you encourage and support and help them like go deeper in the spiritual? I'm posing a question.
well, for me, I've always had a hard time with superficial fluff, and that's part of my personality. But I am not the kind of person that is giggly and silly and all of that, because like Xaundelle who's giggling over there. It's just not part of my personality. So when I have a good friend for me is somebody that I can sit down, I can pick up my cup of coffee and I can go, you know what? This was a really bad week for me. And let me just tell you why it was a bad week. It was a bad week because blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, I've dumped it all out on my friend and they've come back and said, yeah, I get it. And then we can go into deep things of the Lord and how how I can overcome that or how, whatever. And so that for me is how I foster that in my friends. But maybe I'm a bad friend because if my friend isn't one of those people that I can go deep with in the first 5 minutes of a conversation, I'm just not a friend. I'm just not a friend. I just can't. I just cannot do it. And I've had to learn that that's just my personality and that's who I am. And I'm just not good at small talk. So I have a job where I have to do a lot of small talk. And so I leave it at work. I just can't do it. So that's my answer. Saphrane's probably not the greatest answer, but that's me. What about you, Miss Giggly Sean?
I mean, I feel like the only friends I have I do like ministry with anyways right now because if I'm not working or with my family, it's not like I have a ton of time for other friends right now. But the majority of the people that I have like deep relationship with, the majority of the things that we do together are like, like with Stephanie, we do a lot of the gardening and chicken stuff together. Like we're kind of just like running after the same things right now. And because I don't have a lot of extra time, if I'm gonna do something with a friend, like they're probably gonna get roped into doing some crazy food prepping with me or something, So I'm like thinking like that's part of the reason I think I enjoy doing Lovely so much is because I'm so close to the people that I do it with. So like traveling with Lindsay and like, I've had other friends come through. Obviously, like Alyssa's helped me with it before. But it's just like being able to, when I am spending that extra time with something, it's doing something that I feel really meaningful fulfilling, like helping others, and doing it with people I love. And then we do have a lot of intercession prayer times. Yeah, like a lot of intercession prayer times together where we're um
Are you done?
we're not-
Are you done?
and so just like we do have a lot of time where we are like ministering to each other because of the work we do. We have to always make sure we're good. And I've taken seasons away from Lovely to work through things personally, you know, and just like being a community together. Like I feel like more than anything, like my circle of friends usually are really supporting like the ministry or the things that I care about, which are, I mean, I guess funny enough, that's homesteading and ministry to women in the sex industry. So most of my friends have to show up to the toy drive if they want to see me. I do. I have a lot of random friends that come to all the things we do because it's like they know that that's what I'm passionate about. Or, you know, like I know with the Rudolphs and stuff, we spend a lot of time, you know, pouring over the things that we're excited about when it comes to things we talk about, end times and things like that. Go to weird giant conferences together, or I mean, it's just my life right now. But so I guess not necessarily like how do I forget Saaphraine's question. I think it was like how do we spear those things in your community, but I think it's finding the community that's to like where you're at in your walk is what's been important for me in this season. And it's not a huge group, but it's just finding some of those quality ones. And I guess I like to giggle and drink wine while I'm doing it. I don't know.
Anybody else have any input? All right. Okay. Well, make sure to email. I don't have the fun little scroll along the bottom because we're using a different medium, but make sure to email. What was the email, Sean? Saf, do you remember? Elysa, do you remember?
I think it's Mighty Women at Chameleon Church.
Okay, so email mightywomen@chameleonchurch.com if you have anything you want to discuss next month. Also, if you preferred the other format or if you like this format, I prefer this format just because I can see everybody, but I also can see that not everybody from last month showed up, which could be just they were busy, but I want to make sure it's not because of the format. So this, Alan's going to put this on Band, and I think he's going to put it on Rumble. So we'll probably get some feedback after that at mightywomen@chameleonchurch.com. Just letting us know how it went. And if you have anything you'd like us to go deeper in, maybe we'll touch on deliverance next time. Maybe we won't. It all depends on what the Lord is saying, because deliverance can be a pretty weighty subject.
It's going to be on Facebook and YouTube like last time.
Not on Rumble?
No, Chameleon Church, Facebook, and YouTube. Isn't that what it was at last time?
I have no idea.
I don't even know
Wherever it was last time.
but definitely YouTube.
Yeah,
It was
definitely
on
YouTube.
YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. I do everything I can to not watch myself on these type of things. Alan watches them back like right after he's done with it. I don't know how he does it. I don't want to see myself on here. So wherever we were last time is where we'll be this time. And I don't have any outro music. Nothing fancy about Zoom. So yeah. So if anybody has feedback about it, we would love to hear it. And if anybody has something that they really want to discuss or talk about, we'd love to hear that too. We might eventually, the new calendar hopefully will be out soon. So we might go over a little bit about how we use the calendar. More than just to keep track of the feasts. I don't know. I don't know if we want to talk about that or not, but there's just different things that we can talk. We can also do super stuff that's really important, like what Xaundelle was mentioning, which was homesteading, urban homesteading. There's also canning and stuff like that. My daughter-in-law and Saphraine are talking about coming over here and doing some canning, so that'll be fun. But anyway, just anything like that. We can touch on anything. It doesn't have to be super spiritual, but if you feel like you need super spiritual, we can touch on that too, because I know that for me, that is something I don't have in my life. Because we have a really hard, we live in a church desert. Actually, let me see, evangelical church desert. There's a church on every corner here, but it's not one that I would go to. So I understand if you need the deep spiritual stuff, we're good with that too. So
Denise, you said you had issues popping up for you out of the conversation. Did you have questions before we just shut down? Or like something?
Not
that
at
you
this time, thank you. I
Okay.
just, it brought to mind things that I wondered over my life, life experience that maybe I'm not at liberty or feel comfortable with putting out in the public due to the nature of, but there's many things, a little deeper understanding. So I really appreciate your candor and with your experiences and places, locations, events and that sort of thing, that just kind of like, it's like, oh, okay, well, things clarify a little bit. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, if there's specific stuff that you don't want, I mean, I know this is gonna be published later. I mean, email us, or there's the band chat or whatever, but.
Yeah, I'm on both. And so,
Okay.
yeah, it's all good. Thank you.
well, it's like the questions that we got, we didn't mention the people that sent them to us. So we're fine with doing that. So
I do have a
you
question
can,
before we
I'm
go.
sorry, Carrie, I'm sorry, one more thing. You can also do a direct message to any of us. You can direct message Elysa, Saphraine, or Xaundelle. I'm on as Alan. So I think if you direct message Alan, I'll go to him. So just direct one of them. They can address it without bringing your name into it if you want to in the future. Go ahead, Carrie, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's just had to do with the dream class that you gave. Was there a paper that was supposed to, oh, you're
She's
giggling.
Saphraine has been hounding me for it. So here's what happened. So
Okay.
we had 3 sessions. I did the first session and then I copied it and made the second session, but I overwrote the first session. So I have to redo the first one so that I can make it a PDF of all 3. So I have 2 and 3, but I just have to remake 1. And then once I do, it'll be a PDF and Alan will put it up somewhere. I know this is a terrible excuse, but I have been crazy busy, but it's on my calendar to do, and I will have that PDF soon. No
Well,
promise of date, but I will
okay.
have it soon.
Okay. Thank you.
I've done my job hounding her for it.
Just keep that.
Yes, she has. There's also somebody, I don't remember who it is, there's somebody that sent a dream for interpretation, and I have it printed out, but it's so much easier for me to have it verbally. So I actually might have Saphraine read it to me, because a lot of times if I hear it, that's when I also get the interpretation. So next time Saphraine's over, Saphraine, if you remind me, I'll have you read me that dream so I can do that interpretation, because that has been on my mind also, because I think it's a warning dream. So I want to get that done. Betty, how are you doing tonight?
I think you're muted.
Okay. I can unmute.
You can ask them to.
Oh,
It like pops up a button on their screen. There she is.
Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Yes.
yeah. How are you doing, Betty?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Had a little rough time with a 4-year-old today, but other than that,
You know, those 4-year-olds.
Beth, she's 4, so crazy to me.
yeah, getting a little sassy.
Tracy, I'm glad you made it, even though you had to work late. Jane, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just taking it all in because I look at it from a backwards standpoint because I never had any of those things done over me. I learned a lot of scripture from my Baptist grandmother, but nothing else. So it's like I'm backing into all this and I'm enjoying that there's people out there that care about their children and their gifts. So I'm just taking it all in. I'm loving it. I'm just quiet.
Monica's been super quiet tonight. Oh, she just left. Oh, there she is. Hey, Monica.
Hi. I've just been listening, just like Jane. I was just like, this is kind of different because, you know, with Alan and stuff, we're used to that. So I'm kind of like, just like, you know, because like you say, you're like, just, you know, no laughing, no nothing. So I've been like, okay, let me just listen and see what's going on.
I
But
know,
I
I'm
really
sorry.
like, it's okay that you have two different personalities. I like this setting because it's women. And I feel like all of us have some things that we could probably share and learn from each other. I do want to share that it's been a couple of weeks now. Our church, we had a service. This lady she's been coming every so often. I don't know if she's going to come like a regular basis, but anyways, at the end of the service, our pastor she had gone to him and was talking about getting prayed for her throat because it's been hurting. And he asked her, well, the husband, did you pray for her? And he says, yes. And so she's like, I want prayer. But she looked at me because I happened to be up there, and she looked at me and she goes, I want her to pray for me. And I was like, I don't know. I just had this feeling come over my body. And it was like, and I put my hands like this, you know, and I was like looking at her and I was just watching her. And I could hear my pastor saying, no, it's not going to be a prayer. This is healing. And all of a sudden I could hear, it's time. And I just went and touched her neck. And I was like, I could feel like heat, you know, and it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had this, you know, afterwards, not that moment. And she just looked at me, she gave me a hug, and the following Saturday, she says her throat was healed and has not hurt. It's been hurting for months and months.
Nice.
It's her vocal cords, not her, you know, actual. So I did not realize that might be a gift I have. That's the very first time that's ever happened to me. Because I know I wrote it down. I have intercession, serving, helping, encouraging, and exhorting gifts. From the other church I had gone to, we did a discovery. I don't know exactly all of the intercession, yes, you know, but my question is, would we learn how to come about these gifts and learn more about them in this session? Would we kind of like go over that? Or I don't know exactly how this platform you're doing. I'm not, you know, that's why I was real quiet because I don't know what we're going to be doing.
The platform is meant to just be very open so that we can discuss whatever we want to discuss.
Perfect.
I was going to address something first. Technically, scripturally, we should all have all of the gifts. All of the gifts are available to us. All of the gifts are for us.
Right.
You can have stronger gifts, right? Like I would probably say in a general setting, oh, I don't really have the gift of, okay, I wouldn't say that. I would say my least active gift is probably healing, that I have prayed for somebody for healing and they've gotten healed. I would say my most predominant gift would either be, you know, discernment or prophecy, words of knowledge. But because all of the gifts are available to us,
right,
we can actively use all of the gifts.
Right.
at hand for us. Some might be stronger than others. You might not have used it before or whatever, but they're for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something that we can dive into. I tend to lean on the side of that's more of a impartation. I like to do that in person, but that's probably just because that's how I've experienced it.
What do you like doing in person?
Like
Imparting.
praying for the gifts, getting the gifts, imparting the gifts. Not that it can't be done on this platform. It's just like at the Shavuot conference when we're laying hands on people to get speaking in tongues or, whatever. Like that's just that's my experience. And so that's what I'm used to. Not that it can't be done this way, but I think it would be interesting to kind of dissect the gifts and how maybe each of us have come upon our gifts and how we've practiced them and how we grow stronger in them.
Right.
How you all can as well.
Right.
But
I think it'll be interesting.
don't sell yourself short. You have all of the gifts at your fingertips.
I think it's because I've been watching, like I started with Alan's show and stuff like that, then went to the Shavuot conference, and I think everything is like starting to fall in place, and I'm starting to get a better understanding of what is going on and what we're supposed to be doing.
So to that, just Saphraine touched on it, but this is not Alan's show, and so this is going to be very different.
Correct.
And I know that we came onto Zoom so that we could try to have more interaction. You guys aren't used to having interaction. Alan shuts it all down except for the chat. So I think I would like to do this maybe one more month, unless we get a huge outpouring of I hated it. Just because I think that people just aren't used to it. So that's why I kept saying, hey, everybody can unmute. Like none of us have to be on mute. We can jump in and talk. Yeah, if there's like Saphraine's on mute because Boaz, he's loud or whatever, but we don't have to be. So that way we can all interact as if we're sitting in a living room together. And I think part of that is my old school ways of when I was super young in the Lord, not young in the Lord, but when I was super young and just starting a family, and I needed fellowship, and I needed to understand how to be a mom and how to be a friend and how to be a grown up. And it was so much more helpful for me if I was sitting in a living room with other women and hearing from them and learning from them. And we actually just saw one of those women when we went to California recently to see David Hogan. Deanna and Ron Parado were there, and Deanna was one of the women in the Burbank Vineyard that opened up her home and had a ladies' meeting at her home. And it opened up my eyes to what a ladies' meeting could be, and now how it could be just a different feeling and a different voice and a different personality than a meeting where a man is leading it, which is great. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but women have very unique voices, and I think that a lot of times we don't speak up because sometimes we're more quiet, or we're used to just listening and learning. And I want this to be a place where if we do learn more about our gifts, like Monica just asked, then I would like everybody to bring, like Saphraine said, everybody bring, how did you get your gift? How do you practice your gift? Or plural, like, what do you want? Like, how do you want to expand that and bring on that? And that comes along with my personality of let's go deep right now. Let's, none of this fluff. Let's just go right into it. So, sorry, that's just who I am. But, that's what I kind of want this to be. I want this to be a ladies group where we can, all of us, use our voices and not just sit there and listen to 2 or 3 people talk.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's good too. I'm getting an echo from somebody, but sorry. Because I mean, yes, we discuss, and yes, we have like family mode, gallery mode, whatever on Monday nights, but it's very directed, right? Like we're going through a book step by step, and these are the things we're talking about. But this is more of like community oriented, like Christina's saying, like if you have questions that are, you know, whatever's on your heart, whatever the Lord's been showing you, we're not following step by step, chapter by chapter in a book right now. Like this is the time to bring it up and receive that experience and that wisdom from other women. So
I like this because I even had the thought, and I was going to ask Elise on the chat, that was there a women's only portion on band? Because some of the questions I had, I wasn't quite so sure about just putting it on the main, you know, on the main thread. And so this is that avenue to have those questions brought out, for me anyway, and to be talked about and to see other people's input. So
are you in the women's chat group on band?
Do we?
There is a women's chat group. Are you? I'm not sure. Let me check and see if you're in there.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Nathalie, did you have something to say?
I did, but I forgot what it was.
Okay.
I am not, I like this format. I do. I like this group of people. I am not a women's group kind of person. I hate, like you, fluff and small talk and nonsense and crap. And I'm going to start a Bible study with my daughter, like in a non-charismatic, but a really nice church. And I'm scared. I'm gonna have to do it, but I'm just not a sit around and talk kind of person. This has been interesting though, and I want to keep going. And I do like this format. I guess it's awkward timing for me. I'm busy fixing dinner while we're doing this, so. But
I mean, it's kind of a hard time for me too, because I'm always rushing. Thursdays, I mean, I skid in here at like 4:45. So it's a hard time for me too, but I just don't know if there's a better time. I think we're just always going to come up against somebody's schedule.
Yep, you're right. Always something somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like this.
All right. Well, does anybody have anything else? And if not, we will sign off. And
I'm just going to say one last thing. It was really nice to get the reminder, because it's getting used to another thing to do that I love, but it was just like, it just went out of my head, and I was like, oh, and then when I remembered, it obviously is too late. So that reminder was really nice, because I think too, we'll pick up more people, more women as we go along, because it's a great format, and it's a great place to meet, and, you know, not have a lot of, as you say, and I would say as well, fluff. So thank you, Cristina. We appreciate you.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And I don't remember. I'm with Nathalie. Whatever thought that was just whoop, flew out of my head. So I guess it wasn't important. So I wrote down that we need reminders. I do have a little notebook here that I have been keeping some notes on about just what people are saying they might be interested in. It seems like so far it's really focused on the gifts. Alan did ask if it was okay if he was on. I think he was just going to try to help moderate. I don't know if we're going to need it, so I can tell him next month will be fine. But this is going to be recorded for people to watch either later because they can't make it at this time, or like Christy said, just other people that have watched the replay, maybe they didn't even know about it. So that is something to keep in mind. If we ever get to the point where we think that something is super sensitive, then we can maybe take it offline and stop the recording or whatever. But just to keep in mind, it is going to be recorded, and it is going to be put on our normal Chameleon Church channels, so that, but again, we can stop the recording. We don't have to do that if we don't want to, if things get sensitive. So, and for the gifts, it probably won't be. If we do start talking about deliverance, there'll probably be some sensitive stuff. So,
yeah.
Anyway, on that note, thank you guys all for joining us tonight. You guys are all a huge, huge blessing in my life. And I'm so excited to be able to do this with my daughters and with my kind of daughter over here, Alyssa, and and with you guys. So I'm really glad that, I mean, I am not sad about the amount of people here. I think this is great. So thank you very much. And I'm going to stop the recording and we will see you next month.
You make my heart rejoice when I hear your still small voice whisper teaching and promises, everlasting covenants to seal upon my heart.
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelog Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.